Here we're back, round 6, halfway through the day, Henry. We're about to jump into a match shortly of two of our stream players. We're going to see Philipp again with the Mewtwo Perfection deck.
Yep.
But we're all going to see also going to see Gabor again playing ADP Zacian. So these are ADP Zacian's kind of the most represented deck in the field so far from what we've heard that have been winning. Both these players are currently 3-2, both still in the running as we have 5 more rounds to play here. What are kind of your thoughts on these two decks, kind of your thoughts on the event? Would you have considered ATP Zacian for you to play it?
I think it's a deck that personally I don't enjoy that much playing. However, it's so powerful. The attack of Arceus, Dialga, Palkia, the Altered Creation GX, being able to increase your damage by 30, but also the quantity of prize cards you take is nuts. The use of Dedenne and Crobat can be punished so easily by that. The attacks, including Brave Blade and Ultimate Ray, letting you win in 2 turns after that, provided you can use Boss's Orders twice. We see here it's going to be the matchup against the Mewtwo deck. Both of these players have been featured so far, and the ADP deck almost doesn't have to interact with your opponent's active Pokemon. They're able to just take knockouts on the bench and not really worry about what's in the active. However, we're going to see a lot of different ways that Philipp is able to play the game from his side. We have of course, the Charizard GX attack that will do 300 damage and knock out that ADP. And we have a lot of other kind of attacks that Philipp will be able to use. Let's see how what strategy he kind of wants to employ and how this kind of plays out.
Oh, nice. So I do think one of them is 4-1. It looks like that's what they were saying there. Looks like he is making ADP go first, so we won't see that turn 1 GX attack. Interesting to see this deck actually playing Turbo Patch. That's one that, I haven't seen too much of when it comes to the ADP lists online. I do spend a lot of time looking at the lists online. One thing, too, from the list we've seen is we haven't really seen that iteration of putting Rayquaza GX as well to kind of speed that energy onto your Pokemon to help with those energy switch plays to be able to get that turn 1 Altered Creation. Would you want to be going second with Mewtwo in this matchup just for the Welder?
I think it depends on how reliably you feel that you can get that turn 1 Welder. We see here that Philipp will most likely, provided that Gabor leaves the Jirachi in the active, we may see a Turbo Strike on turn 1. That would let him take a prize on Jirachi, then potentially next turn knock out that ADP. Then he goes down to 2 prizes, and all he needs is a Zacian knockout. We see one trick in Philipp's deck. We see a Victini V, which will be able to knock out Zacian thanks to weakness for only 2 energy, which is really powerful. We see a no Metal Frying Pan in Gabor's deck, which would remove that Fire-type weakness.
Really good for the Mewtwo deck there as well. One thing that, I really used to enjoy being on the Mewtwo side versus the ADP Zacian side is just, if you go first, you're able to attach your energy on turn 1, and then you're able to Flare Blitz GX onto the ADP on your turn 2. Taking a big 3 prizes there, kind of swinging the matchup and being able to have your big charms to withstand a hit from a Zacian. Having to now be forced to Altered Creation to get to that 260 with the Zacian and your Mewtwo being able to survive with no extra damage buffs there really helps you kind of slog through. It's just the speed of the Zacian deck that really throws off when you're on the Mewtwo side.
Yeah, we see no Welder coming out of Philipp on turn 1. That is the problem. You really have to be reliant on this Welder. We also see no damage modifiers in Gabor's list, meaning that he will not be able to reach that 270 number even after Altered Creation. He'll have to cap at 260, which means if he's ever forced to swing into that Mewtwo, he'll be able to use Reshiram Charizard's attack Outrage to deal 30 plus the damage he's taken. So if that's the 260 from Brave Blade, there's a knockout on anything in Gabor's deck.
I think, too, when it comes to the way that you designed the original Perfection deck, one thing that people kind of moved away from was playing Pokegear. Pokegear being able to find your Welders consistently because it's the most important card in your deck. That's one thing when I was playing Centiskorch that I made sure that was in the deck because you need that Welder to be able to advance your game state. And now looking at Philipp's side here, not being able to get that turn 1 Turbo Strike or any sort of attack, it's really scary now because this Altered Creation is going to happen if he can find the water.
Yeah, and we see most Mewtwo Welder decks for a while had switched into a Jirachi-based build. We see Philip here playing a list similar in essence without Jirachi to perhaps a list that we saw early on in the season do very well after the World Championships. Now, of course, we have no Jirachi in this deck, but also no Pokegear, which means naturally it's going to be a little bit harder for him to find those welders. He does have Crobat, which means he can use both Dedenne and Crobat in the same turn. He plays some Acrobike, but in general, we see him have a little bit of a slow start. We also see a slow start from Gabor here.
This is one of the issues with the deck, and this is where I think, as a player, you get frustrated because he just saw so many cards in his deck, no water energy. I might be a little bit tilted on the side there trying to find that. Sure, he has the patches in his hand, but now we're turn off that ultra creation, moving kind of the advantage
Wow.
back to the Mewtwo if the Mewtwo can welder this turn.
And look at this. We have so many triples of cards in Gabor's hand. We have 3 Metal Saucer, 3 Metal Energy. He really would have liked one of those to be a Water Energy. We see just an Intrepid Sword and no energy being found in the top 3. Something you kind of expect when he already has 3 in his hand. And this kind of stall is exactly what Philip will be wanting from this Mewtwo deck. He wasn't able to find his Welder on the first turn. Hopefully he's able to find the Welder here on the second turn. There it is. He's with the Giant Hearth. He's managed to search himself 2 Fire Energy. He's able to attach them both to Mewtwo and Mew and then draw 3 cards.
Yeah, and an additional attach for this turn allows us to Flare Strike that Zacian in the active, moving really the advantage in the Mewtwo's deck. Philip going to take a Stranglehold if he's able to take that knockout. Interesting thing about Gabor's deck is he's only playing 10 energy. He's playing 8 and 2. Some of the lists I've been seeing play 9 and 3, going up to the 12 energy. And I think that's really hurting him right now. Not being able to find that Viridian Forest, no longer playing Energy Spinner. This is supposed to be a turbo deck. You need to Ultra Creation to advance your game state. And as you build your deck, as you look at what versions of this deck to build, chat, because it is a very powerful deck, will be very powerful post rotation as well. Something extremely important to remember is making sure that you're able to make your deck as consistent as possible to execute your game plan.
Yeah, of course. We see here the Welder, another switch. So the Mewtwo will be in the active spot. I wonder what we'll see. A Flare Strike would be an ideal attack here from Philip. Flare Strike dealing 230 damage from copying the Reshiram and Charizard's attack. That'll knock out Zacian very easily. And of course, we also see no Big Charm from Gabor's deck, meaning that the ADP will be able to be knocked out from Flare Blitz, the attack of Charizard GX, not to be confused with Reshiram and Charizard. And that'll deal 300 and knock out the ADP. And then, of course, Philip will only be 1 attack away from winning the game.
It's so interesting seeing the evolution of the Mewtwo deck and the different attackers that they've put. Reshiram and Charizard GX, and again GX. These have kind of stood the test of time. We've lost out on Espeon Deoxys, no longer being played. Gengar, Mimikyu. It's just over the past year to see what's kind of cycled in and out. Mega Lopunny, being in the deck as well. It's so interesting that it stood this test of time.
Yeah, and there's the Flare Strike. So the Zacian will go down. Philip will go down to 4 prizes. And here we're going to see a very, very late Altered Creation GX. It's going to be a huge problem because not only, whilst you set yourself up for the rest of the game, you're buffing your Pokemon. You're, of course, taking a turn to do it. You're taking that attack where you're not actually accomplishing anything. And so the later it goes, that additional prize cards almost doesn't matter. That was a prize card you probably could have taken with a different attack earlier on in the game. And of course, it is very strong if you can pull it off early, but now it's kind of at the point where I'm sure Gabor is wishing he could pull it off earlier or even maybe have used a different attack.
It might be
still see it. I think it may be too late. We may have to see Gabor go for a different line of play. We have a lot of Metal Patch, however, so whilst he only plays 8 Metal Energy, there are 4 Metal Patch, or Metal Saucer, sorry, and 4 Turbo Patch, which will let him recycle those energies and attach them more than he would be able to if he was just attaching from hand. I really think that Gabor thinks he's in a very bad spot. I mean, as do we at this point, really. He has no water energy in his hand. He's forced to use these resources and probably play Professor's Research, discard some more of the resources, and then hope to find a water energy. I think really Philip has definitely control over the pace of the game for now.
And one of the toughest spots is once you're put into these spots that you have to set up these multiple attackers and you're not able to take a knockout, that puts your opponent in the driver's seat when it comes to their boss's orders just being that much stronger. Now with that Dedenne on the board, that's another two prizes, and the Zacian as another two prizes, and that's the game there. And that's why the trading and being able to hit into each other is so important right now to be able to dodge, and still no water energy after we see this hand.
Oh no, he will have access to a Stellar Wish to Jirachi. He will be able to bench that, retreat into it using the escape board on the active, Stellar Wish, and then switch again out of the active, hopefully finding that water energy. But we'll have to see what he actually wants to go for, whether he opts to just use Brave Blade, whether he opts for the still to go for that Altered Creation. There's the Viridian, so he will have access to it. He may opt for it still. That Mewtwo really has so much energy on it, and one of the strengths of this Mewtwo deck is it's able to take prizes really however it wants.
I think one of the sneaky things too that's possible if he doesn't want to win by attacking, Gabor's forced to churn through his deck. The Macargo GX attack, if he goes close to that 5 cards, that's also an alternative win condition that he has by having that card in the deck.
That's a really good point. Yeah, I remember myself, I've used the Macargo GX attack once or twice. It's been able to steal me a few games. It stole me a game last year. Here, there's the Altered Creation. He still opted for it. But of course, these tag team cards, whilst they're so powerful, they give up so many prize cards. There's, 2 of them get knocked out, the game's over. So games could last as little as maybe 3 turns, maybe even, in some very rare scenarios, 2 turns. But really, and what that means is that the slower that you draw, the slower your start is, the less kind of recovery time you have. There is the Charizard. We're going to see it hit the discard pile. Mewtwo and Mew will be able to copy that attack using Perfection. It'll use Flare Blitz GX, deal 300 damage, and knock out that ADP, the Arceus Dialga Palkia.
And he's just showing the classic gameplay of Perfection, where you take a knockout, you take a 3 prizer with Flare Blitz, and then you close the game out with Venom Shot. And, no matter how long it's been to watch this over the year, it just doesn't get old for me. This Mewtwo is just such a generational Pokemon. It's a Pokemon that you love to see, as well as with Charizard. Being able to see them all in the same deck, being able to take down these newer cards, for me as a player and for me as a Pokemon lover, that's what I want to see.
Yeah, and personally, I love to see this deck, doing well still. Almost to the day, a year on from the World Championships last year when it first emerged. We see here the Flare Blitz, which was a new addition, wasn't around last year at the World Championships in Washington. We now have a different deck it's playing against, but same things are happening. It's taking prizes in kind of a different order every game. It's going to really be able to, maneuver however it wants. Also, this Mewtwo is not going anywhere. Gabor has no way to knock out in one hit, meaning all of the energy will stay on it and threaten a very high damage cap.
I think the writing is on the wall for Gabor here. The deck just not being able to set up the way that it's supposed to set up, really slowing it down. I know there's fast starts. I know that Zacian can come back out of nowhere, and you can set up your 230 attacker and take down those 2 prizers at the Dedenne and the Crobat, but just did not go for him here.
No, and there's the GG. It appeared that the players knew each other. They're both German, I believe. So there we go. Unfortunately for Gabor, he goes down. We see, though, at the end, if he was 1 turn faster and was able to use Boss twice, he would have been able to win. It's the strength of that ADP deck. It can end the game so quickly. However, it has to set itself up. It has to use that non-damaging attack in order to actually get to that point. Unfortunately, it was too slow for Gabor.
Yeah, I wonder if his second water energy was prized and he only had 1 in deck, and that's why it was so hard for him to hit it. Didn't really see that on his deck search. But there is another game if we want to jump into that one.
I believe so. Let's see how they're doing it. Yeah, so it was very interesting to watch. Let's see it now. We have, once again, we have Kashvinda on Dragapult.
Spiritomb. No.
Oh, no. We've missed the game again. We saw, it looks like Kashvinda went down to Spiritomb there.
And that was definitely an interesting matchup for Spiritomb versus Dragapult, because here you have all these 1 prize Pokemon with low HP that are damaging themselves, and you're able to spread that damage, but you're weak to them and they hit so hard.
Yeah, and I think previously the matchup was pretty even because of the low HP of Spiritomb, but now they have the Toughness Cape, which will increase the HP by 50 and mean that Dragapult can't just pick it off as easily on the bench with the damage from Max Phantom.
I didn't even think about that, and that's seeing how the new cards are being put into the decks to make them stronger. And I think in these tournaments, being able to see how people are improving and upgrading their decks really provides that value for players to try these new things out.
I think we have so many people trying different decks, and especially because it's online, people maybe feel like there's a little bit less on the line, perhaps. That's a free entry tournament. They're not traveling anywhere. They're not putting too much of their time out, and they're really kind of maybe wanting to try out an idea that they've had or some cool deck that they built themselves. Might want to play something fun, something they enjoy. Give maybe Mewtwo a last hurrah, like we're seeing here, and we're seeing Philipp doing really well with it. And I know Azul. He put out a list on Twitter saying he really likes Weldon Mewtwo. So we may actually see it have quite a deep run here in this tournament, which would be a delight to see. It's a very fun deck to watch and play, of course.
With us, about to sign off here, just to ask you some questions as your pro player. With the split days, just like Worlds would have been the day one, the day two. If you were playing in this tournament, what would you expect for day two when it comes to, is there going to be a new deck? Are people going to copy one of the best decks from today and bring it into day two? What are your thoughts on kind of the situation and how to approach it if you were going to play tomorrow?
I would expect much more refined lists. I'd expect a kind of more concentrated metagame. I'd expect fewer decks in general. People might not play the fringe stuff that things like that. Probably wouldn't see Dragapult. I would also say the accessibility of cards will no longer be as prevalent of an issue as we have in this day one. Anyone who's probably in day two will probably have access to these cards like Eternatus. If they think it's a good deck, they'll be playing it. So I think it's important to not use those factors anymore. And also you can kind of tailor your deck towards what you expect. So I would expect potentially Eternatus, depending on what people find in their own testing that is really strong. We'll definitely see a more concentrated metagame.
If we're looking at the three most hyped new decks being Eternatus, Vikavolt V, and Scorch, which one of those do you think has a chance to make a deep run tomorrow?
I think all of them do. I think they have their respective strengths and weaknesses. I think Vikavolt, if you're thinking about it purely theoretical, it maybe isn't as strong as the others, but item lock is just so powerful that optimal game plans are not going to be executed from your opponent, and that's how it wins games. At the end of the day, Paralyzing Bolt, the effect of turning off items from your opponent is always going to be such a powerful effect. It really hinders their setup. And even if the matchup might be favorable, anything could happen during the game. But it'll also depend on how much people will tech for it, such as the Bird Keeper we've seen, the Malolana, even cards like Channeler. It'll depend how people might kind of expect Vikavolt. I feel like it's one of those decks that's easier to counter than the others. Center Scorch could have a very good run. ADPZ could even have a good run, since that deck can win any matchup, provided it draws properly. Fortunately, we didn't see it draw too well when we've seen it, but in general, it's a very powerful deck.
And when it comes to the old guard, which of these three do you think would have the best chance tomorrow? With Pikarom, the Welder Mewtwo variants, ADP Zacian, and you know what? Let's throw Mill. Let's throw Mill into that equation as well.
I think Control's a very good deck. So I don't think the aggressive Mill is too good, but in terms of the kind of destroy your opponent's hand and then gradually mill them out, use a Rangaroo to maybe run them out of resources, I think that definitely has its strengths for sure. We'll have to see how prevalent a lot of these decks are and if they're prepared for it. I think we could definitely see that more in day two when we go to this kind of best of three format, I believe, which obviously this deck will have a lot more time to shine.
And as someone here that's excited for a Rangaroo to rotate, what card are you most excited to rotate?
Part of me is very excited for Fiery Flint. We see Baby Blacephalon go down in play a little bit. I'm also probably looking forward to, I guess, Electropower maybe. That'll make Vikavolt a little bit weaker. Honestly, I think the main thing is just the Fiery Flint. Hopefully seeing a little bit of less Blacephalon play and maybe a little bit less focused on one-shots.
Well, that's awesome. I'm Mark. That's Henry. Thank you so much for spending your time here with us at the Atlas POG. Please enjoy the next few rounds that are coming in. You got old decks, new decks, and I can't wait to see what happens in day two.
Thanks, guys. If you're playing in next pod or tomorrow, good luck. Have a good day.